I love the kind of movies you make, and I think you've pulled off kind of a neat trick. You happen to be in what I considered one of the worst films of the year last year, Little Fockers.
What?
And have made and written and directed one of the best films, or the best film so far, of the new year. So I'd like you to use those. Talk to me about the two different kinds of films.
You can't put me in that position. That's a lose-lose situation. My buddies all worked on that movie. I have a lot of friends invested in that movie. Am I actually addressing that? Look, I did a day or two on Little Fockers, and I had a great time. I think they made the third movie. And I think they had I think it's an interesting thing. You had a lot of smart people working on that movie, and it shows how difficult it is to recreate something. So I thought Meet the Parents was just a genius movie. I thought Jay Roach achieved everything he wanted to with that movie. John Hamburger, the writer, Ben and Bob, and the acting side. Great ensemble, a really terrific movie. It's really tough to keep replicating that from movie to movie. So happy to be a part of it, and I get a little grief for being Dr. Bob, but I can live with that. And now on to Win-Win. Right?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And what a different beast it is than your big Hollywood movie, or is it to you?
I don't know. I was one of the writers on Up. That wonderful Pixar movie that came out a year ago, and that is, I think most people would say, a big movie. That process felt very similar to my process in creating Win-Win and creating The Visitor, The Station Agent. And that's because it's all about story, and that's the main concern. And I think, some movies, big or small, that still is their primary concern, is good story and good characters. And I think that has nothing to do with budget or size, or it really just has to do with the fundamentals of screenwriting.
Wow, that's interesting. Now, when you think of your movie, I took my daughter, who hadn't seen any of your movies before. She's 18, and she was trying to say, well, what kind of movies does he make? And I was trying to explain them to her. It's like, it's almost impossible to explain. To me, your movies are made up of these small moments. Like, I love the very opening where you have that kind of plastic, fake stained glass window angel, and it just... that suction cup to the window and just sort of falls off. That just speaks volumes. It's funny. It's human. You immediately know the environment you're in.
Right.
The movie is just full. She turned to me after the movie and says, "I've never seen you just sort of giggle to yourself so much during a movie. You've got." Well, Amy Ryan says, "Here, have some more corn." That to me is just this great line. I mean, the fact that Bobby, the assistant coach, when he sneaks a peek at what the old man is watching on TV before he goes into this room. The movie is just full of these tiny little moments. From your point of view, is it a bunch of little moments that add up, or are you more concerned about the overarching arc of the story, and these little moments are sort of almost random or accidental?
I'm always concerned with the the full arc of the story. That as a writer I have to be, but I think I am a writer who loves to take the time for these little detours, because I believe that's what life is made up of, these small little in-betweens, and maybe in good part because I'm dealing with characters who for the most part are very ordinary characters, and through that I try to find the extraordinary, and I do believe that is made up of a lot of little parts, and some of that is written and some we discover on set, but it is, I think, it's something actors love exploring too. They love when they can find those little moments, and like Bobby looking at the TV, that was his idea.
Is that right?
Yeah, and he did it on one take, and I just burst out laughing. I was like, no, you didn't. You didn't just go check out the show. He's like, I would do that, I think.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, let's do it. So I think it is that is the happy discovery of the process. That, I think we all kind of giggle to ourselves like you were giggling in the movie theater and think, oh, this is great. But it's great when people pick up on it. And it's funny, a lot of times a lot of people say to me, aren't you worried you're too subtle, that people won't get it? And I'll say, well, give me an example. And they'll give me a great example. And I'm like, well, you got it. So what are we having this discussion for? And I think, they're not all instrumental to the plot, which is important. If you get it, great. I have a lot of people who have seen Win-Win twice now, and they're like, I actually enjoyed it more the second time because I was able to notice a lot of these little bits and pieces, and I think that's a great thing.
I can imagine.
So the moral is, see it twice.
Yeah, I see it.
In every market.
That's why you named it
Opening
twice.
here, April 1st.
Win-win. Okay, and then we'll get to you, Alex, in a bit, because I love what you did with it. But I want to end with you, Tom, on terms of what is it about wrestling for you? Both personally, because I know you have personal, reaction, or you have personal involvement with wrestling, but also artistically. What does wrestling allow you to do artistically?
That's a good question. I mean, one thing that I was excited about was being able to, once we had a wrestler and a very good one and everyone else we had wrestled, I could really kind of hang back with the cameras and catch the sport for what it is. Sometimes you go to a wrestling match, it's incredibly engaging. You know, you're really caught up on it. It's a wild match with some great athletes. And sometimes it's, dare I say, boring. Don't you think, Alex? Sometimes you're just sitting there and, like, you even see the kids on the bench and they're all zoned out. No one's really watching. The coach is kind of half-heartedly giving advice, you know, like, keep your head up, keep focused, which we play a little bit with the movie to great comic effect with Tambor and Cannavale. But it is that sort of trade-off of like a high school sport, not trying to sensationalize it in any way, but just trying to let it be. And there are those moments that are really special. You get sucked in. And then there's those moments where you're like, these are just some kids rolling around on a mat. Why are we standing here? Seems like we should be somewhere else.
Now, you were a wrestler. See, to me, I've always admired wrestlers in school because that's the last thing I would want to do, because you have nobody to blame but yourself for that loss. It's not like a team member. It's a real mano-mano kind of a competition.
It's brutal. You know, it's one thing to lose in a team sport. And like team loss, you go in the locker room, you slap each other on the back, you go home. Wrestling, you get beat up. You don't just lose, you get beat up. It's embarrassing. So you go home, how'd you do, son? Oh, I got beat up. I got beat up again. Yeah. With everyone watching. There is that element of it where it is, there's no hiding. It is you out there. Joe Taboni, who created the story with me, was a fellow high school wrestler and a very, very bad one. And he used to say, I can just remember I just wanted to crawl off the mat. I was always trying to get to the edge of the mat. It's like I would hold on to anything, the coach's ankle, the score table. I just didn't want to be on the mat. But of course, he did it for 4 years.
Of course.
You have to question someone's intelligence.
Well, in some ways, it feels like it's the essence of the human condition.
Right,
you know?
right, yeah. I mean, look, if I was Alex here, who happens to be a very, very good wrestler, I probably would have liked it. I would have liked to never lose. And you know, I think I would have had a different perspective on wrestling. It probably would have been a different movie.
That's right. Lose would never be. Okay, now, Alex, I mean, you've been getting, I just saw the USA Today article yesterday. I mean, you get all sorts of praise. I want to start with you, just talking about you as a wrestler. You are a state champion wrestler. What makes for a good wrestler?
You know what? What makes her a good wrestler is, like, I would guess a lot of discipline without being cocky. I mean, I really kind of put my whole mind into it, and like everything I do is wrestling for me. Like during season, I go to 2 to 3 practices 5 days a week, so Jeez. I wrestled a lot.
And did you find it at all scary or threatening? I mean, it seems to me kind of again, not as a non-wrestler, I can't imagine wanting to go out, and when you see that guy across from you, you know he's going to either embarrass you, humiliate you, or take your humiliation, you know, on his back. Is it at all scary in that way? I played a lot of sports, but I never did this one-on-one kind of stuff.
Yeah, I never really look at it as a scary way. I get, maybe it's just me. I love it. I love going out there and wrestling. I could think of one instance that I was extremely scared. Was my first match at the States last year. I was wrestling a kid and I was winning the match 11-6, and then all of a sudden, come the third period, it was 11-11. And I remember looking at him and just thinking, like, this kid's taking away my life. This kid's gonna take away like what I'm. Like, me winning, this is like mine. I don't know. It's like, wow. It was, like, to me, that was like my scariest moment of wrestling, probably.
And did you turn that into a burst of energy and pin him or score that one more point?
Yeah, I actually did. I did turn that into a burst of energy, and I threw him actually right on his back.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now, here's what I think is great. How would you gauge wrestling in movies in general? Have you seen movies where you're just, you know, because most of us who know anything, when we see the movie version of it, we just sort of roll our eyes. Is wrestling in other movies pretty pathetic, or does it seem more or less realistic to you?
It seems not realistic at all. It's like, come on, Vision Quest. Let's be honest. Let's look at the wrestling and win-win. Then let's look at a Vision Quest and come on.
So what's wrong with Vision Quest wrestling? What is it about the wrestling in that isn't right?
Well, first of all their facial expressions are a bit ridiculous, and the sound effects, like wrestlers don't make sounds like that. That's not what happens when people wrestle. They don't, and like the faces when they're like all like struggling and they're like, oh, this is so hard. Like, rarely will that face ever be made.
Very good. And you give the imprimatur to Tom's direction of the wrestling. Those wrestling matches look like real wrestling matches to you.
Yes, those wrestling matches look like very real wrestling matches, and Tom did a great job with that.
So, So what I have to ask now, though, maybe to both of you, is wrestling ever that hysterical? I mean, I found myself, and again, this is all with the direction. It's also seemed very, very funny when bad wrestlers try to grope, around with each other. I mean, it's very funny. But I imagine as a competitive wrestler, you didn't have too many chuckles in the real world.
No, it's really never that funny. I've only had one experience. There's a kid on my team who had this very similar name. His name was Stifler, ironically. And his name was Stifler on my wrestling team. He was a very not good wrestler. He was a very sweet kid, and I love Stifler, but he was not good at wrestling whatsoever. And he did this one match. He was getting his butt kicked, but he only got tacked. I mean, and he only got tacked. He didn't get pinned, and that was like this huge thing for him. And like we had this whole like we all were like so excited for him.
Keep in mind,
funny.
tech means you lose by a lot of points, but you don't get pinned,
Yeah.
like Stemler in the movie. So
Exactly.
I can't believe we've never had this discussion. We're having this now in Seattle on radio.
Oh, I never told you about Stifler. I did tell you about Stifler.
You got the scoop, Tom.
Yeah,
all right, no, I've told him about this before.
All right. Okay, so now you are a wrestler. You've never acted before, and now you're in this great movie. Do you just feel like you just got some kind of bizarre stroke of luck, or do you feel like this is where my career was going all along?
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, it's the other answer. Some bizarre stroke of luck. I mean, I am very thankful for what I have now, and I'd never, ever in my entire life imagined myself sitting here on a radio show right now talking to you. So my life has drastically changed for the better.
And is acting in any way like wrestling? I mean, can you take whatever made you a good wrestler and apply it to acting, or is it a completely different skill set?
Well, I hope I can.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what it really is with me is the whole discipline thing and really just putting in a lot of hours and just becoming the best that I can be at it. And I guess that's what I'm going to start and try to do with acting.
So, I've raised 2 teenage daughters. I know exactly what teenagers are like, at least on the surface, and you nailed it so well. I mean, you're this placid, inarticulate nothing, on the surface, and yet you have so much personality and life underneath it. Did you have any trouble relating to that, or did that just feel like this is in my wheelhouse? Like, this is kind of how I am?
I mean, it's definitely not who I am. I'm much, much, much different from Kyle. But, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it wasn't like really hard or anything. I mean, I don't want to sound cocky or arrogant, but it was, Tom made it very easy for me. Tom set me up with an acting coach. He set me up with, a movie to watch, Ordinary People, and I just kind of used in my own way. I really listened to screamo music, and I just thought about like Kyle's life. Like Kyle has this awful life, but he also is a regular kid on the inside. So I just kind of put those two together. Were
Paul and Amy at all like your own parents? I know you don't come from a broken home or all this like your real character, but the family you're kind of adopted by, did they remind you at all of your parents, or is that also a stretch?
Well, you know what? They remind me of the regular parents, like parents that you would naturally see. They were very they were just like very caring parents. And, I mean, I have a similar relationship with my parents. They're very caring. Yeah. So,
that's good.
It did remind me of my parents.
And then my final question, because I know we have to wrap it up. So, do you think that you could take either Tom or Paul on the wrestling mat?
Oh, yes.
Jeez, that just gave me the willies thinking about that. Kill us both. There's no question.
Okay.